Archangel Michael says, "I order you to open this right now." This is not a coincidence, and it is not something to scroll past the way you have scrolled past countless other things today without giving them a second thought. My child, stay here. Something has been waiting for your attention, and today, finally, it is being named directly. Breathe slowly. Let your shoulders soften. Whatever has filled your attention recently, set it aside for these next several minutes, because what follows deserves genuine presence rather than passing, distracted attention. Here is why this message speaks with such directness rather than gentle suggestion. Gentle suggestion has already been tried. It arrived quietly, repeatedly, in small nudges you likely noticed and then dismissed, in moments of clarity that surfaced and then faded once ordinary daily life reclaimed your attention. Gentleness alone has not been enough to break through, and so today, this message arrives with more urgency, not out of anger, but out of genuine care, refusing to remain quiet any longer. Reflect honestly on what specifically has been waiting for your attention, the matter this direct, urgent message is speaking most clearly toward. Perhaps a relationship requiring honest conversation rather than continued ambiguity. Perhaps a decision that has remained suspended for far longer than its actual complexity would seem to require. Perhaps a piece of healing that keeps resurfacing despite your best efforts to set it aside. Perhaps simply a persistent, quiet sense that something in your current life no longer fits who you are becoming. Give yourself genuine time with this reflection rather than settling immediately for whatever answer first comes to mind. Sometimes multiple matters simultaneously deserve this kind of urgent attention, and identifying which one feels most pressing right now can help you focus your energy more effectively than attempting to address everything at once. Whatever specifically arose as you considered these possibilities, hold it clearly in mind as you continue through this reflection, because this is exactly what this message has been asking you to finally address. My child, understand this clearly. This directness is not meant to frighten you. It is meant to finally cut through whatever noise, distraction, or habitual avoidance has kept this particular matter quietly at the margins of your attention for far too long already. Sometimes love speaks softly. Sometimes love speaks with urgency, because urgency is what the moment genuinely requires. Think about the specific parent, teacher, or mentor figure in your own life who once spoke to you directly, firmly, precisely because gentler approaches had already failed to produce the necessary response. Notice, in retrospect, whether that directness ultimately reflected genuine care rather than harshness, even if it did not feel entirely comfortable to receive in the moment it was actually delivered. This message speaks in that same spirit today. Consider how many times something resembling this current moment of recognition has already surfaced in your own life, moments when clarity arrived and then quietly faded once ordinary daily demands reclaimed your attention. This pattern of repeated recognition followed by repeated postponement deserves honest examination rather than continued, automatic dismissal. Try to name, as specifically as you genuinely can, how many times this particular matter has already surfaced in your thoughts over recent weeks or months. Once. A handful of times. So many times you have genuinely lost count. This honest accounting, however uncomfortable it might feel, helps illustrate concretely why this particular moment deserves the directness this message has been offering throughout its content. Here is something worth understanding about why urgency matters specifically now, rather than continuing to treat this particular matter as something reasonably postponed towards some more convenient future moment. Time does not actually function the way prolonged postponement often implicitly assumes it does, as an unlimited resource that will simply remain available whenever you eventually decide you are ready. Every day spent in continued postponement is a day that cannot later be reclaimed or lived differently, regardless of how much genuine intention you eventually bring toward finally addressing this particular matter. This is not meant to generate panic. It is simply an honest reminder of something easily forgotten amid the comfortable illusion that unlimited time remains available for eventually addressing whatever currently feels too difficult or inconvenient to address directly right now. Picture how differently today might feel if you knew, with certainty, that it represented the final genuine opportunity you would ever have to address this specific matter. This is not offered as literal prophecy, but as a useful exercise in perspective, since the artificial sense of unlimited remaining time is often precisely what allows postponement to continue indefinitely. Fear likely underlies whatever hesitation has kept this particular matter unaddressed until now, worth examining honestly rather than allowing it to operate silently in the background of continued avoidance. Fear of a specific outcome, worrying that genuine engagement will produce a result you do not want. Fear of the process itself, the discomfort genuine engagement typically requires. Fear of what genuine engagement might require you to subsequently change, recognizing that authentic response to this particular matter may ripple outward into other areas of your life. Notice, too, that fear often intensifies specifically when a matter genuinely matters, rather than remaining flat and disinterested toward things of little consequence. If your own fear regarding this particular matter feels genuinely strong, this intensity itself may confirm exactly how significant this matter actually is, rather than suggesting it should be avoided entirely. Reflect honestly on which of these fears, or what combination, feels most relevant to your own particular situation. Naming this fear clearly, rather than experiencing it only as vague, undifferentiated resistance, tends to make it significantly more workable. Ask yourself honestly how likely the specific feared outcome actually is, based on genuine evidence rather than anxious imagination generating worst-case scenarios without adequate grounding in actual probability or precedent from your own life experience. Ask yourself, too, whether you would genuinely be unable to handle this feared outcome even if it did occur, given everything you have already survived and handled throughout your life up to this point. Most people, examining this question honestly rather than simply accepting their anxious assumption without genuine scrutiny, discover they possess significantly more resilience and capability than their fear typically credits them with. Consider making a brief, honest inventory of specific past difficulties you have already successfully navigated, situations that, at the time, may have felt genuinely overwhelming, yet which you ultimately found a way through. This inventory, however brief, often provides concrete, personally relevant evidence that directly contradicts whatever anxious narrative currently suggests you would be unable to handle whatever specific outcome you fear regarding this current matter. My child, here is something worth understanding about what genuine engagement with this particular matter might actually look like in practical terms, since this message is not suggesting reckless, impulsive action taken without any genuine thought or consideration. Genuine engagement involves honest reflection followed by concrete, deliberate action, translating whatever clarity has emerged through this reflection into actual, practical engagement with your real circumstances. If your identified matter involves a relationship, this might mean having one honest conversation, clearly communicating genuine feelings rather than continuing ambiguous interaction. If it involves a decision, this might mean actually making that decision within the next day, rather than continuing to circle around it indefinitely. If it involves healing or self-examination, this might mean sitting with whatever difficult material has been avoided, or scheduling appropriate professional support if that feels relevant to the specific weight this matter carries. Whatever this specific engagement turns out to look like for your own particular situation, notice that it does not need to be dramatic in order to represent genuine movement. Small, sincere first steps matter significantly, even when the fuller resolution of whatever this particular matter genuinely involves still requires considerable additional time and effort beyond this initial step. Consider, too, what the very smallest possible version of this genuine engagement might look like, smaller even than whatever first came to mind. Sometimes the most immediately achievable action feels almost too modest to count, yet these smaller starting points often prove far more sustainable than larger, more intimidating steps that end up postponed simply because of their perceived scale and difficulty. Here is something worth understanding about why immediate action specifically matters at this particular moment, rather than continuing to treat this reflection as something that can reasonably wait for a more convenient future point. Moments of genuine clarity do not typically remain equally accessible and vivid indefinitely. Ordinary daily life has a consistent tendency to reclaim attention, gradually diminishing the vividness and motivational force of even genuinely significant insights. Consider what specific action you can take within the next day, not the next week or month, that would represent genuine movement toward whatever matter this reflection has helped you identify. My child, support during this process often proves valuable, since facing this particular matter entirely alone often proves more difficult than necessary. Consider who in your life might serve as a genuine source of encouragement as you begin engaging directly with whatever this message has helped you identify. If professional support feels relevant to your specific matter, whether therapeutic support for healing work, career coaching for professional matters, or other appropriate professional resources, consider this a legitimate, valuable part of genuine engagement, rather than viewing it as somehow separate from or less significant than purely personal effort alone. Doubt likely has arisen at some point during this reflection, questioning whether this message's central claim genuinely applies to your own specific situation, or whether it simply represents generic spiritual encouragement offered broadly without genuine connection to your actual, particular circumstances. Consider whether your own doubt reflects genuine, careful evaluation, or whether it reflects something else, perhaps the very avoidance pattern this message has been describing throughout, manifesting specifically as skepticism toward the message itself. Here is something further worth understanding about the specific tone of this message, since directness sometimes gets misunderstood as harshness or judgment, when it actually reflects the opposite. A parent who genuinely loves a child does not always speak gently when gentle speech has already proven insufficient to communicate genuine urgency. Sometimes love says, clearly and firmly, "This matters, please listen," precisely because softer approaches have already been tried without producing the necessary response. This message speaks this way because you are genuinely worth this level of directness and care, not despite that care, but specifically because of it. Consider what it would mean to actually receive this directness as care, rather than continuing to interpret firmness automatically as criticism or harshness. Many people, especially those who grew up in environments where directness was consistently tied to anger or disappointment, struggle to separate the two. If this describes your own particular experience, notice that this specific message intends something different, urgency born entirely from genuine investment in your well-being, rather than any form of judgment or frustration directed toward you personally. My child, here is something worth understanding about what genuinely changes once you have finally begun engaging with this particular matter, translating urgency into concrete action rather than continuing the pattern of postponement that has likely characterized your relationship with it until now. Many people report significant relief following genuine engagement, even when that engagement involves real, ongoing challenges that do not immediately and completely resolve simply through the act of beginning. This relief stems not from the absence of difficulty, but from the absence of the particular exhaustion that prolonged avoidance and postponement typically produces, mental and emotional energy previously consumed by continued deliberation becoming available instead for the different, often more manageable work of actually engaging with whatever genuine challenges this particular matter involves once directly addressed. Many people wait indefinitely for a feeling of complete readiness before beginning something significant, a feeling that, for most genuinely worthwhile undertakings, never actually arrives in the complete, certain form that continued waiting seems to be anticipating. Genuine readiness, more often, develops through the very process of beginning, rather than existing as a prerequisite that must be fully achieved before beginning becomes possible or appropriate. Consider whether you have been waiting for this kind of complete readiness regarding whatever matter this reflection has helped you identify, a readiness that may simply not arrive in the form you have been anticipating until after you have actually begun engaging directly with the matter itself. My child, measuring your own particular timeline and readiness against other people's apparent confidence and timing often produces unnecessary additional pressure that does not genuinely reflect how most people actually experience significant commitment and change. Most genuine commitments, even those that eventually prove successful and worthwhile, are made amid real uncertainty and real fear, rather than the complete confidence that comparison to others might lead you to believe should be present first. Consider what it would mean to release this comparison, recognizing that your own particular path toward genuine engagement, however hesitant or uncertain it has felt, remains entirely valid regardless of how smoothly other people might appear to navigate similar decisions in their own particular circumstances. This directness, however firm its language and framing have been throughout this reflection, has not arrived to frighten you or generate anxious urgency disconnected from genuine, gentle care. It has arrived because this particular matter genuinely deserves your attention, offering a genuine opportunity for direct engagement with whatever has been waiting patiently for your response. Release whatever shame or self-criticism might have accumulated regarding your previous postponement of this particular matter. Shame does not accelerate genuine engagement. It simply adds unnecessary additional weight on top of whatever difficulty already exists in facing this matter directly. Approach this moment instead with genuine self-compassion, recognizing that postponement in the face of significant, meaningful matters is an extremely common human pattern, alongside genuine readiness to finally respond differently than you have responded to similar previous opportunities. My child, genuine, timely action ultimately requires trusting your own capacity to navigate whatever unfolds once that action has actually been taken. Many people, when caught in extended postponement regarding significant matters, are actually struggling less with uncertainty about what they want, and more with uncertainty about their own capability to handle the consequences and responsibilities that genuine action inevitably brings. Reflect honestly on whether this describes your own particular situation, whether the primary obstacle preventing genuine action has been uncertainty about what you actually want, or uncertainty about your own capacity to handle whatever that action genuinely requires once undertaken. Your current physical and emotional well-being genuinely influences your capacity for timely engagement, since chronic exhaustion, unaddressed stress, or significant ongoing emotional difficulty genuinely limits available capacity for the kind of courageous, sustained action this particular matter likely requires. If your own well-being has been significantly neglected recently, consider whether some attention to rest, basic self-care, and emotional support might actually represent an important part of genuinely preparing yourself for the more direct engagement this message has been encouraging throughout its content. Consider what specific systems you might build to support consistent, ongoing action, rather than relying purely on the initial burst of motivation this reflection has hopefully provided, motivation that, like most initial bursts of enthusiasm, will likely fade over time regardless of how genuinely significant this particular matter remains. Consider the specific role that your current environment plays in either supporting or undermining your capacity for timely action, since environment shapes behavior considerably more than most people initially recognize. If your current social circle normalizes patterns of extended postponement and hesitation, this environmental influence deserves honest consideration as you continue developing your own particular approach toward genuine, timely engagement. Reflect on what specific relationships in your life might genuinely benefit from knowing about your renewed commitment to this particular matter, people whose knowledge of your commitment might itself provide additional, valuable accountability supporting your continued follow-through over the coming weeks. This does not require sharing every detail with everyone in your life. It simply invites consideration of whether broader, appropriate transparency about your genuine commitment might serve your continued engagement more effectively. Examine, too, what specific obstacles from your own particular history have most consistently derailed previous attempts at similar significant engagement, whether related to this specific matter or to other significant matters you have faced throughout your life. Perhaps a pattern of losing motivation once initial difficulty arises. Perhaps a pattern of becoming overwhelmed by attempting too much too quickly, rather than sustaining more modest, consistent engagement over an extended period. Whatever specific pattern has most consistently interfered with your previous attempts, name it clearly now, and consider what specific strategy might help you navigate around this particular pattern more effectively this time. Consider what genuine celebration might look like once you have taken that first concrete step this message has been encouraging throughout its content, recognizing that acknowledging genuine progress, however small, tends to reinforce continued engagement far more effectively than moving immediately toward the next challenge without ever genuinely registering what has already been accomplished. My child, think about the specific relationship between rest and readiness throughout this particular process. You cannot keep pouring from an empty container indefinitely. If exhaustion has been quietly building underneath everything else this message has already addressed, that exhaustion deserves direct attention too, rather than simply being pushed aside as an afterthought. Consider what rest would actually look like for you specifically, right now, not the idealized version other people describe, but the version that would genuinely restore something in you that has been running on empty for longer than you have probably admitted, even to yourself. Explore, as well, the specific power of small, repeated choices over time. You do not need to solve everything this message has touched on within a single day. Genuine change rarely happens that way, no matter how much a person might wish it could. What actually works, consistently, across countless different situations, is small, repeated choice, one honest moment today, another tomorrow, another the day after that, slowly accumulating into something genuinely different than where you started. Consider what specific danger perfectionism might pose as you move forward from today. If you find yourself believing that today's insight must immediately produce flawless, permanent change, release that particular expectation right now. It sets an impossible standard that few people could genuinely meet. Progress will be messy. You will have good days and harder days. All of that is normal, and none of it erases the genuine value of what you found here today. My child, here is something worth understanding about the specific role that self-trust plays throughout this entire process, since genuine, timely action ultimately requires trusting your own capacity to navigate whatever unfolds once that action has actually been taken, a trust that develops through actually taking small steps and discovering, through direct, lived experience, that you can handle whatever those steps genuinely require of you. Consider a specific past instance when you doubted your own capacity before taking action, only to discover, once the action was actually taken, that you were more capable than your initial doubt had suggested. This kind of remembered evidence, drawn from your own actual history rather than abstract reassurance alone, tends to prove far more convincing than any external encouragement could ever manage to provide on its own. My child, here is my final blessing for you as this message continues toward its close. You are not being commanded today out of harshness. You are being called forward out of genuine, deep care, the kind that refuses to let you remain stuck in a pattern that has quietly cost you more than you may have fully realized. This blessing accompanies this direct instruction, not opposed to it, but woven fully within it. Before this message reaches its true close, take one final moment for yourself, genuinely absorbing what has emerged throughout this reflection rather than rushing immediately toward whatever comes next in your day. Name, specifically, what matter this message has actually been pointing toward in your own particular life. Name, specifically, the concrete action you intend to take within the next day, moving this matter from the category of things perpetually postponed into the category of things actively, genuinely being addressed. This does not need to feel dramatic or overwhelming in order to matter significantly. It simply needs to feel genuine, real engagement rather than another moment of temporary reflection quickly forgotten once this message ends and your attention naturally returns to whatever else occupies your ordinary day. Trust that this particular message reached you today for a genuine reason, connecting specifically to something already present and waiting within your own awareness, rather than arriving randomly or without relevance to your actual life circumstances. Something in you recognized enough significance to continue reading this far, past the point where you might have closed this message earlier had it genuinely carried no connection to anything significant currently present in your own life. Consider, too, what it might mean to continue checking in with yourself over the coming days regarding whatever action you have begun today, recognizing that genuine follow-through often requires sustained engagement beyond this single initial moment of reflection and commitment. Perhaps setting aside a few minutes each day, or each week, to honestly assess whether you are continuing to move forward with whatever process this reflection has helped you begin. How you will handle the inevitable moments of doubt or difficulty that are likely to arise as you continue this process beyond today deserves genuine reflection as well, moments when the clarity you feel right now begins to feel more distant or uncertain amid the ordinary demands and complications of daily life. These moments of doubt do not indicate that your original clarity was somehow mistaken. They simply reflect the natural fluctuation that accompanies any genuine process of significant engagement and change. When these moments of doubt eventually arise, consider returning to this specific reflection, rereading whatever sections felt most significant during this initial encounter, allowing the content to reinforce your original commitment even as its initial emotional intensity has naturally softened somewhat with the passage of time. Consider, too, reaching out to whatever support person you have identified, sharing the specific doubt currently being experienced rather than allowing it to operate silently, potentially derailing your continued engagement. What specific obstacles are most likely to arise as you continue translating today's recognition into sustained action over the coming weeks deserves consideration as well. practical complications that make continued follow-through more difficult than it seemed during this initial moment of clarity. Old patterns of avoidance attempting to reassert themselves, particularly once the immediate emotional impact of this message begins to fade. Whatever specific obstacle feels most likely for your own particular situation, briefly considering in advance how you might respond to it can help you navigate it more effectively when it actually arises. Most significant matters worth genuinely addressing rarely resolve completely within a single conversation or action. Progress more often looks like continued, honest engagement over time, gradual movement toward genuine resolution, even if that resolution takes considerably longer to fully develop than you might initially hope given the intensity of clarity present in this particular moment. Consider what specific record you might keep as you continue this process beyond today, some form of documentation that allows you to track genuine progress over time rather than relying purely on memory to preserve the clarity and commitment you feel right now. This does not need to be elaborate. A simple note, written somewhere you will actually encounter again, briefly describing what this matter has been about and the action you intend to take, can serve as valuable evidence later. My child, consider, finally, what it would mean to trust that this particular directness, whatever specific form it has taken in reaching you today, arrives out of genuine care rather than any arbitrary or coercive intention. This message is not trying to frighten you into hasty, poorly considered action. It is simply offering honest, direct encouragement to interrupt a pattern of postponement that has likely extended considerably longer than genuine necessity would actually require, inviting you toward the genuine freedom and fulfillment that comes from finally engaging with what has been waiting patiently for your attention. There is one more layer worth adding before this message truly comes to its close, something practical that helps ensure this direct instruction actually produces the lasting response it deserves rather than becoming simply one more instance of temporary motivation quickly forgotten once ordinary daily demands reassert themselves. Consider what specific daily practice might help you maintain connection to whatever clarity has emerged through this particular reflection, something brief enough to sustain consistently rather than elaborate enough to likely be abandoned once initial motivation naturally diminishes over time. Perhaps a few minutes each morning, briefly recommitting to whatever action you have identified as your genuine response to this direct message. Reflect on what specific evidence of genuine progress you might reasonably look for over the coming weeks, evidence that would help confirm authentic movement is actually occurring, even when that movement unfolds gradually rather than through one single, dramatic moment of complete resolution. Perhaps a growing sense of lightness or relief connected to whatever matter you have begun addressing. Perhaps concrete developments in whatever specific action you identified as your initial step forward. Consider, too, what specific role reflection and reassessment might play as this process continues unfolding beyond today. Genuine engagement with significant matters rarely proceeds in a perfectly smooth, predictable line from initial recognition through complete resolution. It typically involves periods of clear progress alongside periods where the path forward becomes temporarily less obvious, requiring renewed reflection and, sometimes, genuine reconsideration of the specific approach being taken. Give yourself genuine permission for this kind of ongoing reassessment, distinguishing it clearly from the pattern of postponement and avoidance this message has been addressing throughout its content. Reassessment, engaged in honestly while maintaining consistent underlying commitment, represents healthy, adaptive engagement with a genuinely complex matter. My child, explore what your particular relationship with this matter might look like 1 year from today, looking forward with genuine intention rather than simply hoping passively that circumstances will somehow resolve themselves without your continued, active participation. Picture, as specifically as you genuinely can, having engaged consistently and honestly with whatever this direct message has helped you identify, noticing what that engagement has likely produced by that point. Consider what specific people in your life, beyond simply the one supportive individual already discussed earlier in this reflection, might benefit from knowing about your genuine commitment to this particular matter. This does not require sharing every detail with everyone in your life. It simply invites consideration of whether broader, appropriate transparency about your genuine commitment might serve your continued engagement more effectively than continuing to hold this process entirely privately. Reflect, too, on what specific fears or hesitations from your own particular history have most consistently prevented similar significant engagement in the past. Whatever specific pattern has most consistently interfered with your previous attempts, name it clearly now, and consider what specific strategy might help you navigate around this particular pattern more effectively this time, informed by honest reflection on your own particular history rather than generic advice that fails to account for your own specific tendencies and challenges. Consider, as well, what specific role your relationship with uncertainty plays throughout this particular process, since some people navigate uncertainty relatively comfortably while others find it consistently more challenging, often connected to earlier life experiences that shaped their overall relationship with unpredictability and change. If uncertainty feels particularly difficult for you personally, this awareness itself can help you approach this particular matter with appropriate self-compassion, recognizing that your particular difficulty with uncertainty reflects genuine, understandable history rather than any kind of personal failing. My child, explore, too, what specific role spiritual or philosophical practice might play in supporting your continued engagement with this matter, whether prayer, meditation, or simply consistent reflection connected to whatever framework genuinely resonates with your own particular worldview and understanding. Many people find that periods of significant challenge naturally deepen their spiritual or philosophical engagement, precisely because these periods tend to surface exactly the kind of larger questions about meaning, purpose, and direction that such practice has traditionally helped people navigate throughout human history. This message reached you today for a reason. Trust that. Carry it with you. And when you are ready, not before, not because anyone told you to, but when you are genuinely ready, take your next step. Deep down, you already know what that step is. Thank you for receiving this message today, for taking this direct instruction seriously rather than allowing it to pass by unanswered like similar previous moments may have passed by before. Be gentle with yourself as you continue engaging with whatever has been waiting for your attention, one honest, deliberate step at a time. My blessings, child. Go now, and do not delay any longer than you already have.